Jeff Grimes is here to completely rewrite the script for Wisconsin's offense. From Baylor's bruising ground game to Kansas's efficient big play attack, his units have been physical, aggressive, and explosive, or as he says, reliable and violent. But can that success translate to the Big Ten? And is this finally the year the Badgers return to putting some serious points on the scoreboard? I'm Rajiv. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woohoo!
Thanks for joining us. And on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajiv and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, we're diving deep into the Grimes effect, breaking down Jeff Grimes' last few years as an offensive coordinator, from Baylor's power run resurgence to Kansas's explosive balance. We'll set some over-unders for what we think this Wisconsin offense can realistically do in 2025, rushing yards, points per game, and whether this is finally the year the Badgers get back to being a physically dominant team up front. We'll also highlight the key players who could thrive in Grimes' system and become true breakout stars. On the recruiting front, we'll touch on the Zach Taylor decommitment, what it means for Wisconsin's future in the secondary, and where the Badgers sit in the updated 2026 class rankings. You can find our show on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on X. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button so you know when we make new content. Couple quick updates for everyone. The Know Your Foe series from Michigan last week. Go check that out if you haven't watched it. It's a really good interview with a guy from 3 Glasses of Whiskey podcast. We'll have another one drop this week, hopefully. And it's Big Ten Media Days week. So I will be at Big Ten Media Days. I'm going to be doing an interview live from there with Nick Osen. Got some cool shirt lapel mics I'm going to be using, which is fun. And we'll be doing another show as well. I'm going to kind of work in some coverage there. I'm not quite sure how much in depth we're going to get, but you will definitely see Big Ten media coverage on this channel. So come and check that out. Justin, I had a pretty boozy day today. It's my birthday's on Tuesday. So I had a boozy brunch, Mexican food, mimosas. Then I went to another bar and had some old fashions. Then I had some champagne. I'll tell you, it was a boozy day, but haven't drank for a while. So I am sobered up now for the show. I'm ready to go. Well, I'm ready to go, but
it's good to hear.
Over some words, Justin, you'll have to forgive me. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Brewers are now up to 10 wins in a row, tied with the Cubs.
Shut up with that. God, let me tell you something. I'm really annoyed at the Los Angeles Dodgers. Okay. Because, I mean, really?
They ran into a superior team. What do you want from them?
You're going to lose 6 straight games to the Milwaukee Brewers? Get the heck out of here. I am tired of this. We've lost our division lead. We have the best record in baseball, and yet we're not even leading our division. This is
tied for the best record in baseball.
Right. And the fact that both of us, the Cubs and the Brewers, have the best record in baseball, and this is what happens. Don't
worry, we'll pass you soon enough.
It's ridiculous. I'm furious. Anyway, yes, the Cubs are going through some hard times right now. And the Brewers have won seemingly 38 straight games. I think it's probably close to that or something.
They have the most winning record in baseball since late May, something like that. So yeah, we're pretty much just kicking everyone's butt.
Ridiculous. I got to go pack here. There you go. Mr. October, Rajiv got Big Ten Media, brought to him Power Move. Heck yeah. Yes, totally. They did it just for me. Really, Doc. He has to throw in his Go Birds. You see this? Jeez. We've got a new feature with our streaming platform, by the way. If you're watching on YouTube, our comments are going to be streaming live here. I can turn it off if someone's saying some stuff I don't want to put up there. But for the most part, we're going to leave it up there. So Zach Bartz is saying here, hypothetical situation. Let's say Taylor decommits, flips a month or so ago. Does that change our approach chances with guys like Kambe Forney, who realistically could have played together with that news? I'm going to start that because we're going to get to that a little bit later, Justin. We are going to talk a little bit about a lot of stuff. Chris Hart's, how the Spurs going to be. Oh man, Premier League season's about to start, my friend. Premier League season's about to start.
So is Championship League.
Yeah, well, live down there, Wrexham. Okay, Jeff Grimes. So Jeff Grimes, of course, our new offensive coordinator. Justin has done some really cool analysis of the last several years of Jeff Grimes as an offensive coordinator, back to the BYU days, Baylor, Kansas, all that stuff. So he's done some analysis, and he's kind of get some averages together of some statistics as far as passing yards per attempt, so on and so forth. We're going to take those numbers and we're going to do some over and unders on that and talk about some of the realistic expectations of the Jeff Grimes system. Because look, I think that we're all pretty excited about what's going to happen here and where this offense can go, the return to power and all that kind of fun stuff. So I'm going to put up a graphic here. We're going to start here. Where did it go? There it is. All right. So let me get this off the screen here. Okay. So this is the last 4 years. All right. So this is not as far back as Justin went with his statistics, but just to get a sense of what Jeff Grimes has done in the last 4 years. The 21, 22, 23 were at Baylor, averaged around 3,000 plus total yards. Quite an anomaly in 2024. I'm going to ask Justin about that here in a minute, though. He obviously has a lot more details on that. If you look across the board, averaging close to 8 yards per attempt. Some outliers in rushing, but if you look at the 21-21 Baylor season, 220 yards rushing per game. The yards per attempt, a bit all over the map, but for the most part, we're in a pretty good spot there. The points are the real thing. I mean, you can look at the points. Look at this column here. So I'm going to read it off listening to on a podcast. 2021 through 2024, 31.6 points a game, 32.2, 33.3, 29.7. What you know from looking at that, Justin, is that Wisconsin is nowhere near that number and hasn't been near that number since Luke Fickell, frankly, took over.
33.3 correct? Is it 23.3?
I think it's 33.3, but I could be wrong.
I'll double check that.
All right. So, Justin, talk to me a little bit about, first of all, the 2024 season. You've done a lot of research on Kansas. You've watched a lot of that stuff. Tell me a little bit about what you saw in that season. Why is it an outlier as far as the passing yards before we kind of get into some deeper stuff? And feel free to share with any of the other stuff that you sort of looked into.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest takeaway for me is it's significantly lower passing wise than any season that he's had prior to this. The next closest one is 2,750 yards, and he hasn't had perfect systems wherever else he went. The reality to me was Jalen Daniels just wasn't good last year. He sat out the year prior, so I think he came back in kind of rusty into the season. And he really struggled until the second half of the year, and his numbers reflect that. The touchdown interception ratio is the worst of his entire OC career last year. And that revolves heavily around the fact that Daniels was not overly efficient. He made some bad throws, made some bad decisions, and that was a huge factor in why that offense struggled at times, in my opinion. I know Kansas fans did not love him last year, but I looked at it a lot. There was some discussion of, he gets too conservative, he runs the football too much. Well, if you have a quarterback that you can't trust to make good decisions, at times you're going to lean into what you think is your strength, which if you look at their rushing stats from last year, that was a strength of that team. They were very good with the ball on the ground. I think their top three backs all averaged north of 5.8 yards a carry. So it's pretty easy to lean on that when you have guys that are consistently putting up good numbers.
First of all, I think it might have been 29 because I'm looking at something that says 29 points. I don't know where I got that. Like I said, I had a boozy brunch, guys. So give me a little credit here, Okay. So, yeah, I mean, so you went back to do some research, Justin. You went back to even the BYU days, right? You looked back at some of the statistics that he had back in those days as well to kind of put together a bit of an average. How did you come with your numbers? Is it straight averages over those?
It's straight averages across that. Okay. So I went with what the numbers were across the board for his entire OC career, dating back to 2018, which his first year was at BYU.
Okay.
I do want to throw this one up here from Papa Smurf. Comment said, you can trust B. Edwards, though. So what I will say is in a worse offensive ecosystem at Maryland last year, he had better numbers than what Jalen Daniels did. So you can look at it however you want to, but it's 15-9 versus 15-12. Daniels is bad, and he single-handedly lost them the Illinois game. Like the 3 interceptions that he threw in that game were not remotely close to receivers. They were bad decisions.
So before we get into some over-unders based on the averages that you did, this will be a cool thing. It'll be fun to kind of look at. So not only are we going to go with averages that Jeff Grimes has had, we're also Justin's going to tell you what we have done in that time, what Wisconsin has done in that same time frame with these same statistics. So really cool. But I'm going to start here, just big picture, Justin. What are you most excited about? With Jeff Grimes, offensive coordinator, what is the number one thing you are most looking forward to?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it is a more balanced version of a Wisconsin attack than what we've seen in the past. We've seen typically in the past, our team would lean heavily to the run side. He's far more likely to throw the football. And I think that bears out when we look at the numbers that they lean yardage wise. When you look at Wisconsin from a yardage standpoint, you typically see more rushing yards than passing yards in a season. It's the exact opposite with Grimes. The numbers are still strong for the rushing side, but they typically lean with a higher passing number, which tells me that he's not afraid to attack with that. And that's something that we've kind of been frustrated with the Wisconsin attack over the last 4 or 5 years. It doesn't feel like we took shots downfield. It felt like we were super conservative. And I think that bears out because the passing numbers were extremely like it's almost a disservice to pedestrian to say that our passing game was pedestrian because it was, quite frankly, it was poor over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. So for me, I think one of the things that people always say is power running, power rushing attack, return of the power. Yes, it's return of the power, but it's also, as you said, and you have said it really well, is balance. If you're expecting this offense to be like an old school Paul Chryst offense, that's not it. It's not. It's way more dynamic. It's way more explosive, and it's way more creative. That is the key word that I want to just touch on really fast. We have been saying for years, we want more creativity. We want to see a little more action. We want to figure stuff out. And that, I think, is what you're going to see is creativity. At the same time, though, he understands and manages that power. He knows how to run the ball. His zone blocking schemes and the way that he does things in wide zones and inside stuff, he really has a good system in place. Reliable, violent offense. That is what he coins his offense because he knows that he can rely upon that running game and the principles that he builds into his offense. And it's also very violent, and it's aggression at every point. It's every guy doing their thing. And if you can instill that in the players that we have, that's where I think it gets exciting because we know we've got talent on this team, but we've been so far behind, frankly, and I hate to just, dog on the guy, but Phil Longo set us back a little bit, right? Because of the nonsense that he ran, the poor relationships that he had with Luke Fickell, certainly, and whatever else went wrong, it set us back. We've got to kind of retake that a little bit. So there is a lot of excitement, I think, in what we're going to see as far as style. So now, Justin, let me ask you before we get into numbers, the player that you are most excited about. I want to say other than Billy Edwards. Don't say Billy Edwards because I think we all know Billy Edwards is going to be exciting. But who are you like really kind of watching for? You're like, I'm excited to see this guy play in this particular system.
I think to me, and quite honestly, after watching so much Kansas last year, it really is Aker. Like I really like that. Was the guy I followed around the field, that position, when I watched those games, because I was like, I wanted to see a lot of the creativity that's in this offense is based around that guy. Like he's the swing guy in the offense, where you look at it and you see some of the things they use. He's kind of the linchpin of like what they like to do to get creative with stuff. Shifting him around. He's a lot of the motion. But he's also a guy that they will use in a variety of creative ways in order to create plays.
I mean, you've talked a lot about Jackson Aker, and I'm glad that you have the faith in him, and I hope he is. But man, you really are high on his production level this year.
It's not going to be production necessarily. It's going to be that he's going to be a very effective piece in what he's used as in the offense. That can show up in a variety of ways. It can be making a big block on a play that sets up somebody else to grab big yards. It can be, leaking out of the backfield on a play where they're expecting him to block and getting 10 yards up the middle on a 3rd and 2. Like there's little things that they do with that guy that are situations where he kind of is the guy you just don't pay enough attention to in the offense. And there's a lot of that with him. And that's he's got a plus athletic profile to be doing that type of work.
Eli Davis can't go on a show without talking about Acre. That's right, Eli Davis. Justin loves his Jackson Acre. For me, it's Treachka Kahuna. That's who I'm most excited about in this system. I am still a big time Treach believer. Okay, like we all talked about how excited we were when he came in to college, and we haven't seen the best of him by any means. I think we're going to see the best of him this season, and we're going to see what he really can do, getting separation over the middle, and excuse me, and creating some real havoc for the defenses, which is going to be awesome. Okay, Justin, we'll start at the top with passing yards. So again, you did 2018 to 2024 averages in the Jeff Grimes offensive system. Okay, and that's what we're going to look for. So then what we are going to do is do over and unders about what we think is going to happen this year. And then also, Justin, you're going to give us the number that Wisconsin's had over that time period. So 3,136 passing yards. Now, this is skewed a little bit by what happened in the BYU days. Because if you look at the last few years, the average is a little bit closer to 2,900.
Yep.
But 3,136. Where are you at on this number?
I would say I would go under on this. I don't think we're going to be quite that high. I think we're going to be closer to what the last few years have been, somewhere between that 2,800 and 3,000 number. But I think that's a pretty good situation because the 2 years at BYU are crazy high from a passing number. One of them was 3,700 yards and the other was 3,900. Wisconsin's not going to have those type of numbers to drive up that average. So.
Yeah, it's definitely under on this. And I think that it's, I think I don't even remember what I've said on previous shows. I think it's probably in the 27, 28 range. And I think that's a fine season. I don't expect us to be really a 3,000-yard passing season. I flip-flop back and forth on that. I mean, some days I'm thinking, okay, we can do it. Some days I'm like, I don't know. I mean, once I see what happens in game one, I'll be able to give you a better take on that.
I think it will really depend on how successful the run game is because that will open up our passing game if it's there. And we're going to have a pretty good chance of having some explosive plays that will drive that up.
And where has Wisconsin been in that time frame with passing yards, excluding the COVID year? Because the COVID year was
we pulled the COVID year out because that was just a mess. During that time frame, Wisconsin on average has been 2,639 yards.
2,639.
Yeah, 2,639.
Okay, so that's, and I think that we have to be above that clearly.
Yeah, I don't think that's good enough. And that's been more times than not, that number is actually kind of higher than what we've seen. We've had a lot of years where we've been in that 23, 24 range, which is not good enough for us.
Right. In that time frame with his other teams, his players averaged 21 touchdowns.
Actually, I take that back. No, it was 2,424. That actually seems more accurate. Yeah.
That's Wisconsin.
The other one's the rushing number, which is exactly what I just pointed to with them rushing for more than they pass.
So 21 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. That's the average that you've seen in his system over the last several years. Where are you on both of those? 21 and 9. Do you feel like we're over under each of those?
Honestly, if I was going to say something, I'd probably say push. I think it's actually pretty darn close. I'm gonna be optimistic on this, and I will say above for passing and probably a push on the interceptions because I think he's going to be right around 9. But I think we will be better. Like the Wisconsin number for touchdown passes during that time frame, for comparison's sake, is 16 touchdowns and 10 picks. So we've been not, remotely as efficient as what his offense has been during that time from a passing standpoint.
I think we're going to be higher on both. I think we're going to be over touchdowns and picks.
That's fair.
I think it's an opportunistic offense that's going to, as we've said before, it's not a clear, just ground and pound power running game. It's everything. It's very balanced. And he's going to have that multiplicity, as he likes to say, the unpredictability. But we're playing some really good defenses that I've been saying in the last few weeks. Like, we can't forget the schedule that we have and the players that we're going to face against, right? In that are going to play defense. The defensive backs in this conference. So I think it's probably 12 picks, honestly. I think that's probably a number that's a little more likely. So I think we go over in that because we are going to take a little bit more risks. He does have better talent on this team. There's no doubt about it than compared to his Kansas team. So he should be more effective in that time frame.
I think it will be incredibly interesting to see how much of that hinges on the decision making of Billy Edwards, because it's going to be paramount for him to take care of the football this year. He's got to do a good job of not making poor decisions and shooting ourselves in the foot this year, because that's going to decide probably multiple games this season. If he can not turn the ball over, it will go miles towards putting us in position to not only be bowl eligible, but potentially steal a game or two that we shouldn't.
Yeah. Okay, so 63.4% completion percentage in his time. Where are we at as far as our last few years in completion percentage, and where do you think Grimes' year this is?
We have been at Wisconsin over the same period at 60.4. I think I would say personally the over on this. I think you have a very experienced quarterback, and I think you have a pretty good receiving group. I think he's going to be able to find people that will be open. So I do think that he's going to hit above the 63.4. I think he's going to probably be in the 65 range. But he's a pretty darn experienced quarterback compared to what we're used to. So I think that is my expectation. The 60.4 is kind of honestly, that was depressing almost to see that we're almost under 60%. But we haven't exactly been setting the world afire throwing the football over the last 5 or 6 years here.
I mean, we shouldn't even be counting these because we've had some pretty rough quarterback play. I think it's over. Honestly, I think that it's look again. I think that first of all, one of the risks you have going over on this is we're going to put the ball down the field, and oftentimes that decreases your completion percentage just because Jaden Ballard, Dekel Crowdis, those guys are going to be bombing down the field at times, and we're going to take some real risks. So we're going to lower that a little bit. But that being said, Billy Edwards is a smart guy. He's got a lot of experience, and a lot of those easy throws, some of those and again, we talk a lot about the mesh that he runs in his system that has a lot of guys coming over the middle, whether it's the tight end, whether it's the slot receivers, and even some of the boundary guys. You've got a lot of what I would just call simply easier, more makeable passes for Billy Edwards. The system should allow the guys to be more open than we have it. Now I know that it's separation. Can you get separation as a wide receiver? But the system is different now. Yeah. And I think that we're going to benefit from that. Well, so that's why I would say higher.
It's super creative too. Some of the things that he does, like I said, last year with Kansas, he had times where he put the tight end out and when they go trips right is almost like running mesh with a blocker out there, because you have a big body and a tight end that just gets in the way. And that guy is really effective at kind of creating space for people to move around him. You think that sounds really simple to do in theory, but I don't know how often you've seen it. I have rarely seen it at the college level.
Yeah. What do you think about Greg's question here? How much of a learning curve will the offense have in its first year? Do you feel like we've talked a lot about the last few years of Jeff Grimes. We're going to go into a lot more detail on it. How do you feel like that learning curve is going to adjust?
I feel pretty good about that. I think that it's a lot of plays where there's a window dressing is a big factor in it. And I think that helps in terms of guys learning it, because it's so much more as just what are we doing in terms of motion and whatnot on a given play, but we still know what play we're running. I don't know that this is necessarily an ultra deep playbook. I know that it is probably fairly deep, but there's a lot of window dressing that he does to set stuff up. And I think that that's going to help significantly this year, where it's going to be easier for us than it is for the defense to pick up on some of the things.
8 yards per attempt, Justin. That was a number that you said is his average over the last few years. That's a pretty good number. I mean, 8 yards per attempt.
Yeah, during that time for Wisconsin, we have been at
woefully low.
6.9.
Oh my God. Under 7? Are you kidding me?
Yep.
That's pathetic.
You want some real stuff other than 2019? We have had exactly 1 year where we've been over 7, and that was 7.3 in 2021.
Wow. So where are you at on 8 for us?
That's a pretty good number. I'm going to say it's probably going to be closer to a high 7, so I'm going to go under on it.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to be fairly close. This is an offense that is not going to nickel and dime and throw these 5-yard pass routes. So he's going to take some intermediate shots and stuff that are going to drive up that yards per attempt. So I do expect us to be in a pretty good spot for that number. but I don't expect it to be crazy. Like, he's only had one double-digit year, and that was when Zach Wilson went crazy at BYU. They had like 11 or something like that.
Look, if we get to the high sevens, 7-8, 7-7, 7-8, 7-9, that's a fine number. It means that we're moving the ball down the field. If we're under 7, i.e. what we've had before, that is just when you can't have it. So I think it's fine that we have that number. I do think, I guess the whole point of this discussion is like, are we going to be at his averages?
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like this will be a really close one. I think we are going to see some really good production at this level from passing. Rushing, a whole nother story, not a whole nother story, but another story to talk about. His average over the last 6 years, 2,244 total yards, which is basically runs out to around 176 yards per game.
Mm-hmm. So
I'll start on this one. I'm very confident that we're going to be over that number this year. I think this is a year. This is where we are going to really. This is the offensive line that we have. They have to stay healthy, right? So assuming they're healthy, this is where our line comes into play. This is where Darian Dupree, Dylan Jones, K. Giacomelli, like the incredible backs that we have, the ability to stretch the field with the receivers and the boundary guys to open up more space, the scheme that he runs. We are Wisconsin. We can run the ball, and we will be better than this. I predict us to be over 200 yards rushing per game, and I think it's going to be a very, very nice year in that regard.
I think I would agree with that. I would say we're probably going to be fairly close to what Kansas was last year, which was at 2,500. That seems more in line with where we would be. So to give you a perspective on that, last year, Kansas was 208.8 yards per game rushing. I'm sorry, that was passing. So 212 rushing last year. That seems reasonable to me for this offense this year. I wouldn't be shocked if we get to that point. I don't think I see some people in the chat, Steve Nebone saying 250. He's not going to, like, people that think we're going to lean on the run game and just push up rushing totals. That's not really what he does. He does not. It's far more balanced than what people are expecting based off of what old Wisconsin was. To give you a perspective from a Wisconsin standpoint of where we were after we pulled out that 2020 year, the average rushing stats for Wisconsin over the last, we'll say 7 years, because that one got rid of 6 years, was 2,639.2 yards. So they're like 400 yards more than what his is. And that's with some rough rushing years that we've had the last couple of years added in. Under Christ, if you want to see just how far we leaned, I'll give you the rundown of the rushing totals from the good years under Chris when we had Taylor. 2018 was 3,554 yards. 2019, 3,263. 2021 was 2,742. Those are all at least 400 yards higher than anything we've done in the last 3 years. So and to be fair to Grimes on this too, that number that we have on there is somewhat affected by an awful 2023 year with Baylor, where their line was terrible and they had a team average of 3 yards rushing yards per carry. So that tells you how awful that rushing game was that year. That's dragging that total down. I would say he's probably closer to that 24 range. So 2,400 is probably pretty ballpark for him overall.
Yeah. I don't expect this to be a 3,000 rushing season, which is 250 a game. That's 3,000 yards in the 12 regular season, 12 game. I can't even talk right now. See, it's the boozy brunch. I'm telling you. But there was a comment earlier, and I forgot, it was maybe Steve Nebone, that said 2,929 passing. That could be where we end up. Like, it's probably going to be pretty balanced as far as the rushing and the passing attack, because I think we will lean heavy run, but also we're going to have some explosives offensively that should take us over that. But I think that it's 3,000 is a bit of a stretch, but 22 is way too low. I think we're going to be kind of in that sweet spot of at least 200 yards per game. The more interesting number, though, on rushing is yards per attempt. Which is a number that, obviously you really can hone in on an offense and kind of what it's done. So your number that you want to set here with the averages that he's done is 4.6. Yeah. I think we both already said that
it'll be much higher. I'm definitely taking the over on that. And again, that number is really affected by that 3 yards per carry for the Baylor season. I would say 5 is probably a more reasonable number in terms of what I would expect. And the Wisconsin totals during that time frame. Now, clearly we've been affected by the lack of Jonathan Taylor. Wisconsin hasn't been good running the football for multiple years. Even the last 2 years under Christ, we averaged 4.8 and 4.7 yards a carry. So we were struggling. It's been going downhill for a while. We were hurt the last couple of years as 4.6 and 4.4 the last 2 years. I think we would chalk up some of that to a poor offensive philosophy and the style of run blocking.
Yep,
that's it. Don't like that. I think is a massive effect on that. And I think we would agree that the last 2 years we probably had the weakest starting running backs. I wouldn't necessarily say that Braylon Allen's a weak starter, but him being dinged up all the time definitely affected his productivity.
I think the point you made about offensive philosophy is critical because I know there are people out there that are saying, and it's a fair point. Well, you lost Kevin Haywood, you lost, there's definitely like the line is good, but it's not deep again, pretty much, especially because of that loss. You had Darian Dupree last year. You had Dylan Jones on the roster last year. You had King Yakameli on the roster last year. Why is it all of a sudden going to be so much better? And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the offensive philosophy and it's the way that he's teaching things. It's the mindset that this guy has.
Well, the run blocking scheme is night and day.
Right. But it's that too. Obviously that the philosophy is there too as well, like in the scheme, but it's also just the mindset. Like Phil Longo wasn't, beating down the door saying we're going to run the ball. We're going to be powerful. We're going to be violent and reliable. Jeff Grimes is, and he has a proven track record of doing it. And that's the difference. But yes, as far as scheme, the zone blocking, the way that this is going to be done is going to be, it's more in line with the things that we've done in the past. And it means that we should be much more effective running the football for sure. Okay. So a couple other things that you talked about were some of the lead guys, right? So leading wide receiver, leading running back. This is interesting. The lead running back, again, average for Jeff Grimes systems in the last 7 years, 896 total yards on the season. This is an interesting one because we've got a pretty loaded running back room, 896. So basically 900 as can a guy get there? Can the lead back get that number? I know you obviously think Dylan Jones is going to be that guy this year. Is he going to get to that number? Are we over that average? That
I think he's going to get to that. I honestly, the reason I looked at that, there's only a couple seasons where he had 1,000-yard rusher. He had some pretty rough years. Like there was a year in there where his lead back here, to give you a rundown of the top guys under Grimes during his time, the top running backs. This is what we had for his season averages. When we go to BYU, lead running back, 2018, his top guy had 423 yards. 2019, 359. His last year at BYU in 2020, his top guy had 1,130. Then at Baylor, his first year, he had 1,601. 972 in 22, 519 in 23, and then 1,266 last year at Kansas. So I think it's going to be closer to, I don't know what BYU had on their team in those couple of years. I'll be shocked if we're even remotely close to either of those two first years. I would say it's going to be closer to what we've seen in his bigger years, which I would say is probably going to be 1,100 yards or so is what I would expect if Jones gets a fair amount of the carries, especially if we're thinking there's going to be 2,400 yards. That leaves a lot of yardage left over for the other guys behind.
I think
they could have 700 yards for Dupree and 400 or 500 yards for Yakameli at that point.
We need to return to having 1,000-yard rusher. We need to have that in its arsenal. This offensive line, with the kind of experience we have with Ballman and Renfro and Brunner, and you've got that backfield. You got to have 1,000-yard rusher. And I know that the carries are going to be split, and I want Yakameli to get a lot more carries this year, and I want Dupree to see the field. But this has got to be. We've got to have Dylan Jones has got to get 1,000 yards, and if it's one of the other guys, that's fine. But you got to have 1,000-yard rusher, and hell, Justin, you might even have two.
Yeah,
and I think that it's not a stretch.
I don't think it's a stretch. I do think that will be very interesting to see how the carries are divvied up this year. I would be shocked if you lean heavily on Dylan Jones as his first year as a starter and being a redshirt freshman to put him out there and suddenly start leaning on him as your bell cow. But I do expect him to get between 15 and 20 carries a game probably. And I think you're looking at, for Dupree, probably about 10. And Yakimelli might be in that like 8 range or something like that. So I think there's going to be a fair amount of carries. That's one of the areas when you look at the total attempts on a season average, there's a pretty significant difference between what Wisconsin typically would do and what was happening with those. So Wisconsin average as for rushing 521 attempts per year. He's down at 478. So that's an extra 40 carries that Wisconsin typically has compared to what the Grimes offense normally does.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, you have the lead back actually had 155 carries as an average. We're going to be way over that. Yeah. We better have over 155 carries with a lead back. And those are some of the differences in what he's done at previous schools. Receiving the leading wide receiver, 745 yards. Again, we know the rushing should be much higher. I think 745 is an interesting number to look at for the lead.
I think it is too, because I felt like that was very in line with what I expect as a reasonable number for Vinny Anthony this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be over, and I think it could be. I've said Tretch. I think Tretch could absolutely be the leading receiver on this team. Certainly, Vinny Anthony likely will still be the leading receiver. I think that Tretch is going to have a lot of catches. I think that there's going to be a lot of production, but I think it's going to be spread out, pretty well. You talk about Vinny, you talk about Jaden, you talk about Tretch, you talk about the tight ends, stuff that you've talked about with Aker. We've talked about Tucker Ashcraft, and you've got other wide receivers are going to be in the mix. Eugene Hilton probably at some point. So there's going to be a lot of people that Billy Edwards is going to throw the ball to. And in a Jeff Grimes system, it's about creating avenues to get to good pass lanes and getting people open. And there's going to be schemes for different guys, and there's going to be a lot of decoys, especially deep runs down the field for some of that boundary guys. So we're going to have an interesting situation where the ball's going to be spread around a lot. Still a good number. I think 745 would be amazing for one of these guys to get it. If you get 800 yards out of Vinny Anthony, great season.
I think one of the interesting parts of this is it tells you that his passing games have been typically pretty balanced. They don't typically lean on one receiver to be the guy. I know they had a guy that was over 1,000 yards. It was his high point that I showed you. It was like 1188 or something like that. Most of his seasons, they had their leading receiver was under 1,000 yards.
You start a couple comments from Mr. October here.
Yeah, Mr. October, over under 2.5 rushing leaders for a game. So two and a half different people throughout the season being the leading rusher during a game. I think that's an interesting number. Oh, man. This is going to be tough because I do think Dylan Jones gets the bulk of the carries. It's going to take somebody breaking one probably to steal a leading rusher. And that, if we're saying 2.5, that means that we expect Dupree to have a game where he breaks out and ends up having a big run, and Yakimelli to be the other guy. So it's probably a fair number to put in there. If I was to say it, I would say one or the other is going to do it at some point during the season. I don't know if I see both of them doing it during the course of the season.
Yeah, I think this is thanks you for the great comment, Mr. October. We have another one coming up from him as well. I think it's probably going to be over just because I think it's clear to me, you're going to have games where Dupree is the leading rusher because of a breakup, like he breaks out a 75-yard run or whatever. But the question is, will Yak ever get there? I think Cade Yakimelli does because he's going to get more carries this year. But I mean,
what the guy more carries mean though?
What?
What does more carries mean though?
Well, I mean, last year he got putrid numbers of carries and averaged 8.8 yards a carry. And I'm not suggesting that he's
33 carries last year.
I think that he has games, there's going to be games where Cade can absolutely get 12 carries. Okay, I'm not saying it's going to happen a lot. I'm just saying he can get 12 carries in a game. He gets 12 carries in a game and breaks one, maybe breaks two. I see a situation where he can be the rushing leader one time. It's a really good question, though, because it's unlikely still, but I just feel like the guy deserves to have a really good shot.
There's certainly a way to it. I just wouldn't bet on it happening. But yeah, I think you can see the way where it would happen.
Yeah.
This one is interesting.
So then he says over or under again. Mr. October, good discussion point here. Over or under 4.5 different receiving leaders for games.
If we're talking on a straight yardage, I would probably lean closer to 3 being the number. I think that you can make an argument for Vinny, Ballard, and Tretch all being guys that lead the team in a given game. I don't know if there's anybody else that I look at and say that person's going to go out there and do it. I'd be really surprised.
Yeah, I would say 4 is the maximum here. If you would have set it at 3.5, I think that it would have been maybe we could talk about it. But yeah, I think, well, for 3.5 even, I think I could go over 3.5. I would say if we were talking about like 4 guys leading the team in reception and in receiving yards even, there's no reason that Tucker Ashcraft can't have a big play and ends up with 75 yards and no one else really gets anything because we were rushing a lot. I mean, I feel like it's possible, right? The other 3 certainly are going to have games, Deckel Crowdis. I mean, the guy could have
That's true. I guess he's one to think about. Yeah.
So I think 4 would kind of be where we go with that, which I think would be really good. Yeah, you did mention that the high man had 1,188 yards. That I don't think anyone's getting 1,188 on our team for receptions.
I would be shocked. I believe that was on one of the Zach Wilson seasons, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check that. I'll tell you what year it was. That was, let's see here. Yeah, it was 2020 with Zach Wilson. But the following year at Baylor, he had a guy at 948 on 62.
Yeah.
But I believe that was another NFL guy. So it will be really interesting. I still think that that's a number higher than probably I would go. I think 800 something is probably going to be roughly the right number. I think where you're going to see it is there's going to be some guys that are chasing him, whoever the leader is this year. May only be one guy, but there's a chance it could be 2.
I think it's interesting to look back at this kind of stuff and look at what Grimes has done over the past few years, because it is different than what we've done, and it is something to get excited about. And I think the number one thing and the last thing we'll touch on with this is points. Where do you feel like we realistically get? I feel like you've already answered this. I think you said it's going to be 29 or 30 even. You think we can get to that?
I think I put it somewhere in like the 29 range is where I felt like we would get to. And I just feel like with how disjointed last season was, even with a tough schedule, like if we were not as incompetent as we were at times looking offensively from an execution standpoint, there were points to be had. Like we had games where we moved the football really well and we just didn't cash in. And I just think that there's going to be things that we do this year that are going to be significantly better at being able to cash in. Like I do think this offense is far more adept at being able to put the ball in the end zone than what we were under Longo. Like it's just better for creating rushing lanes, for being able to get a running back into the end zone. And also it's more creative at finding ways to leak guys out and stuff like that give you opportunities to find guys for easy passes in the red zone, which is not something that Longo's system was conducive to.
Yeah, definitely. As I said before, I think it's a pretty big leap to go from 23 to 29. I don't think we're going to get quite that high. We're going to be better defensively, but and so we won't maybe need as much. But the schedule is absolutely brutal, and those teams, man, we're not dropping big points on the entire middle part of our schedule. So we're gonna have to do it at the early part of the year. I don't know. I just don't see. We could score in the first 2 weeks, but Alabama, Maryland, we could put up some points, but. Man, Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State, we're not scoring big points on those guys. It's not happening. Those defenses are way too
I think you would be looking at the if you're going to say the avenue where there's a chance to do it, it's probably you're looking at the first 2 weeks going 40+, chance to go 40+ against Maryland. And then you're looking at, do you think that this team can score against Indiana, Illinois,
Washington,
Minnesota, and Washington?
Yeah.
And I think that you can make an argument that they could score 30+ on those teams. I don't think I would go like mid-30s, but I think that there's going to be an avenue where if the offense has made strides and is more effective, that those games they're going to be capable of doing that.
Okay, so wrapping up the Grimes effect discussion, complete this sentence for me, Justin. At the end of the season, you are going to think what about the Jeff Grimes offense?
I'm going to think that it was the correct decision to make, bringing him in, and that we are headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. Right direction is where I really want to be. It's where I really want to feel. Like I I just want this program to move in the right direction. I think there's so many. You can look at the Fickle hire and people who are saying Leonard and all this. If you have that opinion, it's a very fair opinion. If you have it, I still think it was the right call to take the swing with Fickle, and I think that it will be successful. But he has to get this right. We've said this. Like, this has to be right. You can't. You Longo wasn't going to work. That didn't work. The Grimes hire has to work. Otherwise, this is going to be it for Fickle. This is the last offensive coordinator he hires at Wisconsin. I believe that. And well, not last. If he's here for several more years, it's different. But I think that you can't just fire someone and bring someone else on. That means something is really breaking. And I do expect it. So right direction is my keyword for the year with this. And we're going to see it very early. But everything that you've watched with Baylor and BYU and Kansas and everything that's out there on this guy and the expectations and things that have been seen in practice, like, things are going to change. And if you are a person who loves Wisconsin's power football, it's coming back. It's coming back with wrinkles. It's coming back with not as archaic of an offense, not as boring of an offense, but it's coming back to where you can do it. Reliable, violent, efficiency. Those are the key words for him. All right. Yeah,
I do want to throw a couple more things in there because I agree with you. But one of the things I will say with regards to this is going to the way that he wants to run an offense. This is going to be the deepest level of talent he's had at the positions that he needs coming in. These will be the best running backs he's had as an offensive coordinator. This will be the best offensive line talent he's had coming into a place. It doesn't mean that they're as experienced as some of the places that he's been, but there's more player talent than he's ever had to be able to run the football. And that, to me, is the type of thing that's going to make this offense harder to deal with. Because if you are capable of consistently running the football, it's going to play up everything else in the passing game because so much of it is based off of that run game.
Dominic asked the question, if you could go back and hire Brennan Marion instead, would you?
I don't think that he's the right fit for what we need this year. I don't. You have to have stability and somebody that can hit the ground running. I feel, more confident in Grimes being able to do that and being old and experienced enough to be able to adjust than what I do Brennan. I think Brennan is a guy who has a bright future, but he's also a young guy that maybe doesn't have as much experience dealing with hardship in that role.
I think Jeff Grimes is the hire for the long run. And I think that when you look at this hire out 4 or 5 years from now, you're going to look at a resurgent Wisconsin program. I've talked a lot about the schedule in 26 and 27. It's very nice. It sets up nicely for us to make real runs at the playoffs. It's probably going to expand at some point too. So there's really that opportunity. And I want to see an offense that can withstand a little time. We had that for many years with Chris and his offense, and credit to him. He had great offenses, but we need to kind of build that up and make that happen. All right, let's switch gears a little bit, Justin, and talk quickly about the 2026 class. Zachary Taylor, safety out of Katy, Texas, 3-star, rated at 89. He was one of our higher rated guys on 247 in the class. What do you make of him going to TCU, and where are you at? By the way, we're 58th now, this class. 58th. Let that sink in. That's low.
Oh, it's a problem. It is. I'm not arguing it. This class is not going well. What I will say, I wasn't necessarily super high on him. I think you were higher on him than I was initially. Mm-hmm. I think there's talent there. I think he could be a very productive player, but he was by no means, in my opinion, somebody that was a lock to be a hit in terms of a recruit. What I am seeing from this cycle, Wisconsin absolutely has to do an excellent job of evaluating senior film, and they have got to find some of these guys that are kind of diamond in the rough that maybe we can flip from some schools that they don't belong going to the school that they're going to. Because I'm not sure how many battles, unless we have a really strong season, that you're going to be able to get into and pull guys away from similar level schools.
We've got so I did like him more. I wasn't in love with the guy, but I definitely liked him more than you. But defensive backfield, like we need to
cycle.
Get. I mean, Carson Elam's is the only guy in the room right now.
He's lonely right now. He needs some friends.
Now, I will say that when you look across, we've certainly got some freshmen with Dunn, Dean, Moss, Emmerich. There's guys in the room.
Yeah.
But, you're a little thin up at the top. I mean, you basically got a bunch of freshmen, and you've got the 4 guys that are going to play this year, which are Zachman Brown, Young, Trainer. Like, there needs to be some stacking in the secondary. This is a very important position for us. Now, the transfer portal can certainly, as you've kind of touched on, can certainly be effective in this world, and that's fine. But you can't have one defensive back in a cycle. Like, you got to get rolling with this. And I know we will. I'm not saying we're going to end with one, but if you're losing on some of your top of your guys on the board, you've got to go down your board and find other guys. You got to go flip them. And I'm a little concerned about this. Like, I'm okay losing Taylor. Like, I'm not saying it's the end of the world, but I just feel like it's the message of we're losing people. We're 58th. Like, these are numbers that everyone can go out and look at. These are numbers the recruits can see too. Like, you got to build some momentum, especially because you've had it in the 24 and 25 classes, which were fantastic. It's okay. It's not the end of the world right now. I've said this before. I just think that it's a wait and see game. Like, obviously, where the class finishes, where the class finishes, and it's okay. You're going to lose people along the way. We're going to go flip other people too, right? So that's going to help these things go up. It's all about where these guys were on our board, and did we lose some of our plan A, plan B guys? That's where I think you get concerned, right? Because that's where you have issues.
And I think one of the interesting things to take away is there has been some upheaval in the recruiting department. I know. Zach Zome today just put out there that he's going to be taking a player personnel position with the Raiders, which congrats to him. That's awesome. He's going to get a chance to go to the NFL. I know that he's a guy that wanted to do that player personnel development was something that he was very high on. So scouting, there's some upheaval in that room that they need to get figured out and kind of get locked in. I'm sure it's been tough in that, with Max leaving to go to USC and then now this. And just there's been some switching around that's happening there that I think they need to really get locked in here before the fall hits. But you've got some work to do to sit down and figure out who you want to chase, because we have multiple guys. Like, I think we'd all feel we don't love seeing that Ba just got a Penn State offer, DJ Ba. So that's something you got to look at and be like, are we going to hold on to him? You're going to have to probably do some line work too and figure out who you potentially might want to look at that's a senior riser on the defensive line. This is going to be a cycle that's going to be piecemeal, but you got to do a good job with your evaluations and find some guys that maybe are undervalued.
Yeah. And to be fair, like in Luke, I trust when it comes to recruiting. I have nothing to – obviously, I'm looking at this class and I'm annoyed by it, and I'm annoyed that our rating is so low. I'm annoyed that we haven't landed more 4-star guys. I get it. But I'm also not, woe is me. I just feel like, okay, like I've said before, that I think this could be a filler type of a class where like you've got to stack positions and you gotta get rooms going. But I still think it'll get better. And I still think that time and time again, this staff has proven they're closers. We talk to Nick Osen all the time, and he talks about the relationships that these guys build. It's going to work itself out in the end. I am concerned. I am worried. But at the end of the day, that's also 2026. We've got a lot more important things to worry about, like the season that is coming upon us.
I mean, that's honestly the biggest deal. Like, I think as much as people have been wringing their hands over the recruiting, I don't care anymore. I'm ready to talk about the season and get rolling in this. I want to see football.
Yeah.
Because I don't really care what happens with the class. If this season doesn't look improved, I don't think it really matters.
Yeah. We are 39-ish days away from the opening game, of course, against Miami of Ohio. A couple of quick programming updates here before we close. Again, we're going to be continuing the Know Your Foe series, Big Ten Media Days. I will be there this week. Cannot wait for that. Really, really excited. It's 3 days. I'm only going to go for the 1 day that Wisconsin's going to be there, but hopefully we'll get a lot of good coverage and share some information with everyone about that. And our football preview continues. We're going to go kind of deep diving into Mike Tressel as well and kind of look at some of the stuff that he's done, how he's done the last few years, what we really need to see out of him in the upcoming season. And there'll be more and more preview stuff as we get ever so close to football in 2025. Final thoughts, Justin, before we close the show.
Let's get rolling. Let's hopefully have some positive news start coming out about, players being ready to come in. I'm not sure if we're going to see some updated weights and stuff like that soon. I would anticipate that will be coming out shortly, with practice starting in roughly about a week from tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming we're going to start to see some of that info drop out. which if that happens, great. We'll have some things to really discuss about where we feel everything is at. I honestly, just heading into this, I want to be honest with people. There's going to be positions that I feel really good about development in. One of them is going to be the defensive line, and it's simply going to be a lot of these guys were new faces in the spring. They've had a chance to settle into what their job is going to be now for the entire offseason, and they've got a chance to hopefully lock in and look improved in the fall camp.
The last thing I would say about this is kind of going back to Grimes a little bit, and the whole kind of premise of our show is we've seen this guy do some good things. We've seen this guy struggle at times. It's not an automatic lock that the Grimes system is going to just work, but I think there's real belief in this system right now, and in the locker room and in the meeting rooms, that Wisconsin's turned a bit of a corner as far as our going back to some roots. Luke Fickell realizes now, I think, what he needs as far as the player personnel, the coaching, the style, the philosophy to really be successful with this program. And I know the schedule is going to be tough, and we're going to get into a lot of that stuff, but I mean, I'm really confident in Jeff Grimes, and I'm really, really excited about what we're going to see out of Jeff Grimes. And I think that's the coolest part. And we're also going to have, obviously, you mentioned it, practice starting soon. We're going to be getting some real-time reporting coming out of that too, which is going to be really fun to talk about and seeing who's really shining before we get into our final depth chart and all that stuff.
I think regardless of anything else, one thing I think we need to see too is this team just needs some stability at this point.
Yeah.
We talk about Iowa and we talk about Minnesota. I don't think that what they're striving for is anything crazy, but what they have had is they've had coaches that have been locked into positions for extended periods of time. And that makes a massive difference in terms of being able to count on certain things throughout, heading into a season. You have your defensive coordinators or your offensive coordinators that are people that are locked into a spot that you could trust to be ready to go, and that there's a baseline of what expectations are from those positions. The recruiting room, I think, and the coaching room needs to be that this year. We need to learn that these are guys that are in here for the long haul with this program. And that could be 3 or 4 years max, but that 3 or 4 years of us having the same coaches would be great. We could really use that right now.
Yeah. All right. We'll check out some stuff for Big Ten Media Days this week. We will be back again next week to talk more about this upcoming football season. Thanks for joining us. And as always, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.